Everybody knows who Ethan Klein is.
I'm Ethan Bradbury.
I've made like 10 videos on this channel about him, 2 or 3 on the other channel. He's a classic member of the revolving door of people I talk about negatively. But as it turns out, Ethan Klein may be waking up from his cringe arc that he's been on for a few years. We may be seeing the return of old Ethan sooner rather than later, okay? This may be a based Ethan moment coming, okay? So back in May of 2020, I released these 2 collaborative videos with Nick Diorio going over Ethan's problems and everything that we wanted to criticize him for. It's pretty crazy looking back at what my main criticisms were because they pretty much pale in comparison to what I would say about him today. Back then, he was having drama with Keemstar, where he tried and succeeded in getting G Fuel to stop working with him, but around then is also where his lefty Ethan arc began. You see, before that point, Ethan Klein had been a part of what some would call the AntiSJW Wave. I guess the best way to describe it would be an online movement, more of a trend really than a movement, dedicated to making fun of cringy, ridiculous feminists, oversensitive, left-wing people, etc. Remember when Zarna Joshi accosted some random innocent guy and accused him of harassing her for no reason? Ethan called her out and the video went viral.
You want my name?
Yeah, sure.
It's humongous.
Okay. Humongous what? Humongous what?
Humongous.
Humongous what?
Humongous.
Humongous what?
Humongous.
Humongous what?
That's what it is.
Humongous what? Is that sexual harassment?
No, it's humongous.
Then why did you say that to me?
That's my name.
What? Humongous what?
Humongous what?
Why would you say that to me?
Why would I say it to
Why
you?
would you say that to me?
Why would you ask me my name?
What? Humongous what? This person just spoke to me in a sexually harassing way.
I did not.
Yeah, he did. He said, do you know what my name is? And I said, what? And he said, humongous. Yeah. Yeah, this person just sexually harassed me.
I said I'm humongous.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
But it just dawned on me now that she thought he was alluding to his
penis being humongous.
Ethan and Hila made fun of this person in a video, which is weirdly not even on the H3 channel anymore. I'm not really sure why. They also made fun of the crazy lady who rages at a Lyft driver for having a little like Hawaii bobblehead thing on his dashboard, and she like freaks out. Oh, you thought it was cute, huh? You didn't realize like the pillaging and suffering.
You thought that was adorable. You didn't think about like the pillaging of the like continent of Hawaii.
I didn't even know there was pillaging.
Oh, you didn't?
All right, so we enter mid-conversation. She's already started to at this poor guy, and she started filming it. So she goes, "You thought that was adorable. Didn't you think about the pillaging of like continent of Hawaii? You probably couldn't even point to Hawaii on a map. The continent of Hawaii? Are you seriously gonna get on your soapbox protecting Hawaii when you don't even know it's a f***ing state?"
I think she knows everything. So.
You know what? It probably is a continent now that she said it.
Now it should be.
Okay, so you won't get rid of the doll then? Because that was like really cute thing that you found at Goodwill.
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 Have you ever heard a more obnoxious voice in your life, by the way? You're trying to act super educated, right? Getting up on the soapbox, talking about the continent of Hawaii.
Goodwill.
This was basically a staple of H3 content from 2015 to maybe 2018 or so. Making fun of insane takes overall was his channel's point. Politics had a very loose overlap sometimes, right? You wouldn't call him a serious political channel or anything. He just made fun of everyone, and sometimes that included, you know, cringe feminists or whatever. But this wasn't a serious political thing from Ethan, and I also think he wasn't seen as like a right-wing figure or anything, even though he was making fun of left-wing people. Back then, there was an understanding that there are just some crazy people out there that, you know, are funny to make fun of. Some of them happen to be very, very left-wing. Well, around the time that my video came out, Ethan started talking about how he had accumulated a right-wing fan base, or at least he felt he had, and he did not like that. He was not cool with that. He wasn't having fun with those fans anymore. So he started talking about this fan base and wanting to make deliberate moves to do what he thought was ridding his audience of these right-wingers, which he saw as bad actors.
In a certain point in my career, I was making a lot of videos about social justice warriors and feminists and all this shit. And I think that I attracted quite a bit of more conservative-leaning audience there. The truth is, anyone that follows this podcast or knows, I'm definitely a Democrat, and I'm definitely extremely liberal socially and economically. I'm not one of them. They thought I was one of them, and I'm not.
And that manifested in a few ways over the next few years. One big way was disavowing his podcast with Jordan Peterson, someone who a lot on the right wing think is cool. Jordan talks about oversensitive people on the left. He talks about cultural Marxism in academia, meaning colleges with a lot of like communist professors pushing the stuff on students. And he also became an internet father figure for a lot of young men who need to clean their room, all right? Clean your room!
How many times should I clean my room? Clean your room until when you go in there, you start doing things that are good for you. It's not just making sure that it's not messy, man. It's organizing it so that it's a place where your being can properly manifest itself. It's a place that should invite you to do the things that are good for you in the world. And so you should be thinking when you have a room, if you're fortunate enough to have a room, you think, okay, I want to organize this room so that the probability that I'll do the things that I know I should do is maximally heightened. Set the bloody place up so that when you walk in there, you think, Jesus, a civilized human being could really live in here. And then every time you walk in there, your room will remind you that the proper way to behave in there is to behave as a civilized being. Responsible, intelligent, forward-looking, articulate, concerned about doing what's good in the most courageous and responsible possible way. Not as a two-bit do-gooder who's trying to look good in front of the world, but as someone who's tough and able and caring and reliable and all of that. And that's what your room should tell you. So set the damn thing up until that's what it screams at you when you walk in there.
About 5 or 6 years ago, I want to say around 2017 to 2018, Jordan Peterson became a really big deal in terms of entertainment value, right? A lot of people were talking about him. He's going on every show. I think he went on Piers Morgan. I feel like he's been on every like kind of cultural talk show in that regard that talks about like pop culture type stuff. And he also went on a ton of podcasts because on the internet, podcasts are, the #1 thing. People like Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, pretty much anyone who had a big podcast wanted to talk to this guy and get his perspective. And every time that Jordan went on, the views were crazy. I mean, he was a big name. It was guaranteed success if he came on your podcast. The H3 podcast was relatively new at the time, so they decided to have Jordan on as a guest. And at the time, they talked about the Cult of Outrage and I guess snowflakes or whatever. Looking back, the terminology these people use is super dated, but at the time, that's just how people talked. And it feels even more relevant today hearing this stuff when you think about the people who try to ban anyone they disagree with from ever uploading a video and stuff like that. And you think about cancel culture and censorship overall and the stuff that, some far left people have pushed over the last few years. It kind of makes this podcast and the stuff they talk about feel even more pertinent today than it was back then.
That's why I call it like the cult of outrage, because it does feel more like a cult. People don't really of outrage because they're addicted to outrage and they don't really think about if it's not rational. It's just they're possessed. I think that's a good analogy.
You get possessed by ideas. This is something I learned really from Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst. He said people don't have ideas. Ideas have people, and that's worth thinking about for about 5 years because it's very frequently the case.
Clearly, Ethan was somewhat familiar with his work. I mean, he talked about his book during another interview they did, talked about Jordan's 42 rules for life, which I guess is like a thing he likes to talk about. I'm not really familiar with Jordan Peterson, so if his swag is good or not, you guys can fill me in, but that'll have to be in the comments section below. But what I'm trying to say here is Ethan was definitely a fan of Jordan at the time. He liked him. He spoke like he admired him on the show, and the conversations they had were also pretty interesting.
While reading your new book, in the foreword, I had really loved this anecdote about how your most popular response on Quora was in response to what are the most valuable things everyone should know, right? That was the question.
Yep.
And so you wrote up this little response. How many answers?
42 rules.
42 rules.
Yep.
Really short, snippy responses of 42 rules everyone should live by. And this was the inspiration for this book,
That's
correct?
right, yes.
And so
it got very popular on Quora.
Yeah, it was your most viewed.
By far.
And one of the most viewed on Quora, the site.
Yes.
And I was going over that list, and I loved it so much. And they're all really bite-sized little, snippets. And so I was wondering, if you're up for it, if we could go over that list as a little exercise and maybe expand on some of them.
So in January of 2022, Ethan decided to delete both of those interviews and followed that up with a statement where he said, "Years ago, I interviewed Jordan Peterson before I was familiar with his politics. He was a guest who I enjoyed sitting with. But especially now, I can see he's a dangerous gateway to the alt-right, transphobia, and misinfo. I removed both interviews today." I find the idea that Ethan didn't know this guy's politics pretty hard to believe. I mean, they literally talk about politics on these podcasts. Not in a super, super serious manner, but they do talk about it, beyond surface level.
Why do you think that people hate you so much?
Well, they don't.
Why are your opinions so divisive?
Well, the funny thing is, this is literally the case. I've had 4 pieces of hate mail in the last year. That's it. Like, I'm not getting hate. This is not good. But, you know, it doesn't take very many people to produce something like this. And it's the same old suspects, you know? Like,
Sure.
I've been demonstrated against a number of times in the Southern Ontario area, and I see the same people. It's like, how many people do you need?
They make a lot of noise.
Yes, they do, and they're organized, and they do this sort of semi-professionally.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you feel? I know that people make this association with you because I've seen it when we have guests come on. We have a thread on our subreddit and people post their questions. And I've seen it before. People associate you with pandering to like white supremacists. Or worse, I've even seen the suggestion that you are a white supremacist yourself. So how do you feel about that? And that seems to be like a somewhat widely held
Well, I don't know what to
opinion.
think about that. It's completely ridiculous. Like, for example, I'm an honorary member of a Native American tribe. I got inducted last year. I have an Indian name, a Native American name. Like, it's completely preposterous. And I've been buying carvings from this, like, isolated tribe in northern Vancouver on northern Vancouver Island for 15 years, you know? And so... And I've had it's preposterous.
Maybe what he meant here is he wasn't aware of Jordan's transphobia or something. Even at the time, they did mention trans activist stuff on the podcast, albeit very, very briefly, in a very fleeting way. It wasn't even much of a discussion. It was just Jordan saying these types of people.
The trans activist types, I don't consider them my enemies. So, you know, enemies are people that you wish harm to.
Sure.
And I don't wish harm to them.
What do you consider them?
Well, it depends on who they are, you know.
Like these people in the video who are like, accusing you of being a Nazi sympathizer or
that
pandering to
particular
Nazis.
person, I mean, what would I say? I couldn't, it wasn't very easy to communicate with her. She knew everything already. And she'd already had me pegged. And, you know, I'm kind of accustomed to that sort of thing in some sense. I am a clinical psychologist. Like, it isn't that easy to do something around me that will actually surprise me. I've seen lots. But young, arrogant, misguided, confused, all those things. And none of that's good, you know? And so it doesn't raise feelings of hatred in me. It's more like sadness that's the case. I mean, the people who were protesting against me that day, it wasn't like they were happy, well-adjusted people having good lives. It's like they're very confused for a variety of reasons.
By horrible feelings. They're just consumed by rage.
And bitterness. And resentment. And it's
so
really
all the worst things.
Not good. But I don't wish them harm. That would be foolish.
Sure.
You know, I wish that they would get their act, that they would find their way and get their act together. That would be really good.
But I feel like if you disagree with his stance on trans people, you can just say that, like make a video about it, etc. Deleting the old podcast feels excessive considering that, you know, it wasn't even a topic at the time. I'm of the belief that finding common ground with someone is almost never a bad thing, even if you disagree with Jordan. Makes you realize that we're all human, you know? But that's not the audience Ethan's accumulated. Ethan, over the past few years, has accumulated an audience that doesn't believe in platforming. They believe that deplatforming is good, and they also believe that if you even have a conversation with someone on stream whose ideas may be dangerous, then you're basically hurting the left wing, right? And at the time, a lot of leftists, by leftists I mean Twitter socialists, the kind of people who watch Hassan and Bosch, I guess, they all praised Ethan for taking these podcasts down. Meanwhile, Jordan responded with a decent-sized Twitter thread and said some pretty interesting stuff.
Also, I should warn you that those who engage in
Those who engage in cancel culture generally live to regret it. I'm not going to come after you, except politely in this Twitter thread, but the chickens will definitely come home to roost. You will be held to higher and higher and soon impossible to maintain ethical standards by the very mob you currently wish to please. Then you will make a mistake and they will devour you with glee. Please take this warning seriously. I liked you. I think this is a great point from Jordan, and it's something I've seen happen before online. If you pander to one kind of person, in this case a political group, then if you act even a little out of line, they will immediately hate you. Constant purity testing to make sure you're representing their interests is very common. Policing your language, your humor, your Twitter follows, who you can have your Twitter follows, who you can do collab videos with. And this applies for the far right as well, by the way. This is not just a far left thing. It's just mirrored on the other side, right? Because extreme viewpoints have extreme stances on who you can talk to even. But Ethan ignored this advice at the time and just wrote it off thinking this could never happen because, well, of course it could never happen. He's Ethan Klein and he's doing the right thing, okay? He's saving the West, I guess. And then we got classic clips like why iDubbbz stopped doing edgy humor, where Ian, being iDubbbz, and Anissa go on the H3 podcast, and they basically talk about how they like regret making all the content cops. And then Ethan produced this clip, which is like the most fire clip of all time. The greatest chef from France could not have cooked up something with this much irony in it, okay? This is excellent.
My name is Shay.
Well, I think people have the same problem with me. Is it the same I have a problem with you?
Yeah.
Is that we both used to be like edgy comedians and we were a part of the larger commentary community. And as we've aged, we've realized that, you know, you want to conduct yourself differently.
And this is not even true, by the way. This is not true at all. What Ethan meant to say here is that edgy humor is okay if you joke about right-wing people, okay? Which is why he said what he said about Ben Shapiro, which was a funny joke, don't get me wrong. He should be able to say it. I'm not going to pearl clutch. But you can't say this kind of thing and then have double standards, where you can't make edgy jokes about stuff that Ethan thinks is off limits and the left thinks is off limits, which in this case is like, I guess you can't make jokes about stereotypes or marginalized people, etc. It's basically the argument of like, oh, well, you can make edgy jokes, but only if it's for the right cause, which is so obnoxious because, like, bro, I'm not here for your cause. I just like funny things. That's it. Not everything has to be you taking up arms with your fellow antidepressant popping brothers and storming 7-Eleven, okay? Just chill out. And Ethan did the same thing when he joked about the NRA headquarters as well, which, once again, don't really want to say this out loud on youtube.com.org, but I'm sure you can all imagine what he said. Now, both of these jokes are perfectly fine to make. I really don't care. I'm not offended by this humor. I try not to be offended by any humor because it's a joke, okay? It's meant to make you laugh, not to make you mad. But what happens when Ethan makes a joke that's about as fifth a bad as both of those, but it's about gay people?
He has some leaking. Now, we were saying, well, if he's getting blasted in that hard enough, potentially, you may need to wear a diaper. He's a power bottom?
No, that would...
That's an option, power bottom.
So wouldn't that mean that the diapers aren't for him, though?
No, if he's on the bottom, he's getting railed. That he's an enthusiastic receiver. Oh my God.
He's gay.
Power bottom is a guy who likes to wildly ride the peg of another dude.
What are you saying that?
Power bottom is a guy who likes to wildly ride the peg of another dude while he jerks you off until both have boner orgasms. Yeah.
Get down to the power bottom of things here on the H3 podcast.
These are pretty harmless jokes. I mean, you have to admit it, you know, no homophobia, but butt stuff is kind of, it's a little funny, okay? Like,
that's where the poop comes from, you know? It's just a little funny.
I would say the same for straight people who do butt stuff. It's kind of a funny thing in concept. That doesn't mean you can't do it. And then despite this being like a harmless joke, he gets major pushback from his audience. They hate this. This is actually disgusting. Ethan has this compulsion to constantly categorize men based on their perceived masculinity or femininity and uses it to devalue and insult them. It comes off as Ethan being insecure because it's effing weird to see him be so hyper aware of it in other men. The fact that Ethan casually told the caller that he perceived him to be a bottom because of his voice, even after the caller said that it was none of his business, is so disrespectful. By the way, none of his business means he is a bottom. Then Ethan claiming he doesn't understand how it's offensive to the gay community to label men as bottoms as an insult, even after the caller explained it to him, is absolutely ridiculous. Instead of acknowledging and changing his behavior, he doubles down and excuses it away because it's funny. I also think it's very weird how comfortable he is publicly asking these very personal sexual questions to gay men, and especially this caller in particular, who is already obviously uncomfortable. Oh, and Dan the yes man dismissing, banning, and mocking any LGBT people who criticize them. Definitely 100% not homophobic at all.
Bro.
This is like, you know, this is like the reaping versus sowing meme. Like we're currently we're currently seeing the sowing happen on Ethan Klein. Man, I'm so Zoomer brained. I said reaping versus sowing meme. Dude, it's just like a, it's just a thing, reaping versus sowing. You reap what you sow is just a saying. What is it? Dude, my brain is broken. They say he doesn't know how to handle LGBT culture and make tasteful jokes. They say he's a homophobe. In reality, I feel like a meaningful example of homophobia would be like Ethan voting against gay rights. That's true, like, in-action homophobia. Is he making some crude jokes about adult diapers? Yeah. Is that really harming the LGBT community at large? I would say probably not, no, because they're just jokes. But this is the kind of audience he's accumulated, man. And this would happen again when the whole Atriok situation rolled around. Atriok, a Twitch streamer who was very famous. He was friends with Ludwig and Cutie Cinderella, I believe Pokimane as well. I think he co-founded a business with Ludwig. Big Twitch streamer. Anyway, he was caught looking at AI-generated NSFW of female Twitch streamers. AI prawn, or corn, if you will. And on that same website were some of his streamer friends' NSFW AI-generated material like Pokimane, and his best best friend's wife, Cutie Cinderella. So Atrioc accidentally revealed that he was like tabbed into that on stream, and then he did this whole apology stream after where he admitted he was looking at this stuff and like his wife is in the background. It's kind of blurred out. Like it's just super, it's super crazy.
It's not months and months and months. It was just one video on the same day, and I just stupidly left the tab open. And it was at 2 a.m. on the night before when Ari was out of town. So, and again, there's no excuse for it. I'm not defending anyway. I think this whole category of stuff is wrong. 100%.
Man, I do feel bad for his wife, but how did either of them think this apology video was a good idea? Like, just message the people that you hurt privately, meaning the streamers. The audience is not owed an explanation for this. Regardless, after this, Cutie Cinderella herself ends up crying on stream when talking about this whole thing, because obviously her face is being used without her permission to make not safe for work material in a way that she is obviously not cool with. So Ethan reacts to that on an episode of the H3 podcast while live streaming, and he laughs, and then he plays the, you know, the funny man song, the chestnuts roasting over an open guy.
Jack Frost nipping at your balls. Merry Christmas.
And you can see him laughing the whole time in the corner, like giggling. He's covering his mouth. A few other people in the studio are laughing as well. And then there's this time when they pan over to like one of the female producers, and her face is so like, she looks like Big Red or whatever, like, you know, the feminist who like cried when Trump won or something a few years ago. She's like screaming in the street. You know what I'm talking about? Like she looks like that, and her face is just a complete scowl. Like she's not having it, Ethan.
If you are able to look at women who are not selling themselves or benefiting off of being seen sexually,
you're a monster, dude. You guys are crazy.
Why did you do that? Zach, what the f, bro?
And so this clip comes out, which honestly, like, it's a little awkward, but it's not that bad, okay? You shouldn't have to apologize to a bunch of random people who watch you just because you laughed at a clip of someone crying. Like, is that a crazy take? Is that a hot take? People laugh at effed up stuff sometimes. People laugh at stuff they probably shouldn't. Sometimes it's nervous laughter to cope with the uncomfortable feeling of the whole thing. Sometimes it's the absurdity of the situation. Sometimes people have a funny way of crying, honestly. Some people have like a funny cry. They make a funny face. And in this case, Ethan added a song to the clip, which made it extra funny. But he got a bunch of pushback from his audience about this, which caused him to make this video on his channel just titled Ethan Klein, which is like an apology. And the guy talks like a horse just dominated him in the stables, and he's just stumbled out. He's sweaty. He knows he's never going to use the bathroom right again, and he's just like recovering from cavity trauma or something. Like he sounds so buck broken, so defeated. I like feel bad for him in this clip, and he apologizes, and he's like, man, there's something wrong with me. What have I done?
Someone who I actually really want to support may have felt worse on an already difficult situation because of my careless and very, very inappropriate and gross and stupid behavior, right? And you know, it's not the first time I've done it. That's what's weird. Like, I don't know why. Like, obviously there's something a little bit off about me, right?
And this is so sad to see because, Ethan, if you're listening, which maybe you are, maybe you're not, I don't know, but listen, bro, there's nothing wrong with you, okay? You just laughed at something. If anything, that shows that there is nothing wrong with you. You're human. And I think part of the reason why Ethan's audience is like this is one of his frequent collaborators, Hassan Abi or Hassan Piker. Hassan is the biggest political streamer on Twitch. He's a socialist, and he also advocates for deplatforming his political enemies. So Hassan made sure to call out his friend for laughing, okay? He made sure to call him out. He made sure to say it's incredibly f***ed up.
Watch this clip yesterday, last night after the broadcast was over. It's rough. It's definitely rough, and it's super f***ed up.
And this isn't him defending Ethan at all, by the way, okay? He's not defending him.
And this isn't me defending Ethan at all, by the way, okay? This is not a defense of Ethan.
But what he did was like super up, okay?
What he did was like super up.
And then when someone says something that's true and like a real defense of Ethan, which is like, is just laughing, like, why are you pearl clutching over this? Hassan's like, whoa, 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 hey, no, he effed up, guys, come on. Still lying to his audience.
Super cringe to have your community be so uncharitable and be like, I always hated Ethan and pile on him when it was just poorly timed humor he deeply regretted. What? Hassan, you were so full for this, they laughed inappropriately, arrest them? No, dude, these are all the people that are here involved in this, both the perpetrators and the people that like are being laughed at are my very good friends, okay? Especially Cutie. So like, yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit upset, I think. Right? Am I allowed to feel that way?
Bro, people laugh at things, okay? Maybe you would be a little less miserable if you did too. It's okay to laugh at freaked up stuff now and then. We all do it now and then. Everyone watching this video knows, listen, the boys in the group chat, some of the memes they send there are foul, okay? Some of the jokes we make are straight up rank, stank, and disgusting, okay? You would not want this stuff to be seen by your grandmother ever, or she would probably send you back to Warsaw, okay? But it's a joke, and that's the point, okay? And just because you laugh at something doesn't mean you agree with the opposite political position, okay? But Ethan and Hassan have a podcast together on YouTube called Leftovers. Left being, you know, very intentional. It's supposed to be like a left-wing podcast. And I think as a result, Ethan has accrued a pretty big amount of Hassan supporters and politically invested people on the far left. And as a result, now Ethan's community is not just mad at him for making jokes they don't like, they're mad at him for not supporting communism, and they're calling him a class traitor. Man, that's crazy. So Ethan made this post on his story saying, please do not take these political conversations personally. Being called a class traitor 1,000 times because I'm only a social democrat and not a full socialist makes me not want to have combos like this anymore, which is probably the least productive outcome. And this is because on his podcast recently, he's been running into arguments with his production staff about if communism is the best system to implement as a means to control the economy, or if capitalism is good. And so now Hassan is like reacting to that on stream and being like, dude, he's going through his I hate socialism phase.
Well, and some people, I mean, most Republicans, and I would say even a lot of Democrats would say what you just described, that social democrat kind of point of view.
They're not.
Would say that you are anti-capitalist with that point of view.
Then fine, then I accept that.
Right.
I mean, say whatever the
and
you want.
Social democrats are very often seen as kind of like right on the fence between the what people call the left and the right.
So I'm walking the middle path, like Buddha himself.
Right, you're taking the middle path.
And he seems to be kind of aware of his audience at this point in this like far left socialist, I guess borderline tanky maybe part of his fan base. If not, you know, full on 1000% crazy communist, right? And he pokes fun of them a little bit. He pokes fun, he makes fun of them, and I don't think they're too happy about that. The subreddit's blowing up.
Can you do me a favor, Ian? Put up that this dumb's views do not reflect mine. Not for YouTube, but just for the
audience,
the communists watching. The radical communists watching.
And the thing about these conversations is like they're fine to have. It's totally whatever. And I think socialist debating capitalists in general is a lot of fun, actually. And I don't even like hate someone just because they're a socialist. But there is a internet demographic of insane, annoying, crazy socialists and communists. You guys know the ones I'm talking about. They mostly reside on Twitter, and they're extremely annoying. And now they make up a large amount of Ethan Klein's audience. So now the H3 subreddit, instead of being memes about Ken Bone or whatever, is about the left talking about how to impact positive social change and stop infighting. Like, this is what's going on. How is this real? This community is the perfect example of why the left never achieves anything. We're too busy tearing each other down and cannibalizing ourselves. As a leftist, there's very little that frustrates me more than other leftists. This community became so reactionary, it's sad. I love the memes and the art that get posted, but at this point, it's not worth the rest that comes with it for me. So many people here are chronically online cringe losers. And the statement's probably true, but why is it on the H3 subreddit? Well, that's because this is part of Ethan's brand now, okay? Leftism. And now the lefties are going to slowly fall off of his audience and try to get him canceled for making jokes or not supporting the cause enough, or not being extreme enough. The subreddit is calling Ethan and Hila losers, saying that they took an L for liking Rihanna because she's famous or something. These are the kind of people on this subreddit. They're posting about how Destiny agrees with Ethan just because he hates Hassan. Don't you miss when this was like the meme channel? The H3, like, you know, the meme factory? Vape Nation, y'all. The modern H3 fan base is crazy. I do not envy these people at all. And now Destiny is reacting to H3 podcast episodes of Ethan talking to Dan, which is one of the producers on the show, and Hassan, and praising him for owning modern day socialist ideas. Like, Destiny is like in love with Ethan Klein now.
I love that Ethan, like, I don't even know if he's aware he's doing this. Ethan just like asks really good questions, and he brings up really good points in like the most kind of aloof way. Like, well, it's media propaganda that's made us appreciate Taiwan, and look, we don't even care about Yemen, and blah, 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 blah. And Ethan's like, well, like, I mean, yeah, but don't we like trade a lot more with Taiwan? So isn't that kind of normal? He just happens to like so nonchalantly kind of cut the bullshit and ask like the best kind of question to center the guy. It's really funny. Drunken master style.
At what point does it get big enough to make those decisions?
And that's something that, see, that's why I asked the question about how do you feel about elected
Because like a independent artist is also running a business and could be making a lot of money depending. There's a wide range. So how do we what do we define as?
Businesses aren't government.
True. How does he, bro? He is like the drunken master.
I think it's safe to say that Ethan's realized the audience he's accumulated and that we're gonna see the anti-far left Ethan arc for a little bit, where he pushes back against some of those people and just wants to be a funny guy again, which would be awesome. I think Ethan not being as stuck up anymore and just being like a chill guy who can laugh at every side of the political aisle would be very, very, very nice. And maybe the average Ethan fan can just be a chill guy as well, instead of a terminally online communist Redditor. That would also be very, very nice. Yeah, I think that's a nice note to end this video on. And if you liked this video, consider becoming a member. For $5 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts, unreleased videos, and the members-only Minecraft server. Thanks so much to all of my YouTube members who fund my content.